see you guys in the dark.
When I was a teenager, I got my very first job, which was a newspaper route that I could do after school twice a week. I really enjoyed the job when I began it, and would occasionally interact with the people who I was delivering the newspapers to, and they would all seem friendly during our short interactions. I had a cart that fit all of the newspapers for my route in it, which I would drag down the sidewalk. I had my route for several months, when one afternoon I was doing my route, and a man was walking down the sidewalk. He greeted me, stated that I must be the newspaper girl, and asked if I had delivered a newspaper to his house yet, pointing at it down the street. I replied that I hadn't yet. He suggested that I pass him his newspaper there, rather than needing to go down to his driveway to deliver it in a few minutes. I handed him the paper, and expected him to continue walking along to his house. I bent down to grab more papers out of the cart, and thought that I felt something hit my butt. When I straightened back up, he was walking away from me, with his newspaper rolled up in his hand. At the time, I didn't expect anyone to intentionally hit me on the butt with a rolled-up newspaper, and dismissed it as either an incident or a figment of my imagination. The next week, while doing my route, he was sitting on his front porch and watched me walk down the sidewalk, delivering newspapers to all of his neighbors. When I came down to his driveway, he wolf whistled at me and said, "Here comes the mermaid." I came up to his deck to hand him the newspaper, and immediately turned to leave afterwards to continue my route. He tried to engage me in conversation as I was leaving, and I said, "I'm sorry, but I have to finish my route." While I thought this interaction was odd, I didn't think too much of it at the time. One of the regulations that I was supposed to follow for my route was to make sure that the newspapers were either placed in the customer's mailbox or put somewhere safe. Long before I had met this customer, I had established a pattern of putting his newspaper behind the desk chair beside his front door, up on his deck. The next time that I delivered, I didn't see the man, and planned to put the newspaper in its usual spot, and then go on my way. As I climbed the steps of his deck, his dog barked at me through the window, which was pretty normal. But as I was turning to leave, suddenly the door opened, and the man was standing there, and he tried to engage me in conversation. But I told him again that I needed to finish my route. This became the start of a pattern, and every single time that I delivered the newspaper to his house, he was waiting near the door and opened it as soon as I was coming up to the steps of his deck. He had never came out of his house when I was delivering before he met me on the sidewalk that one time. But now he happened to be right at the door, as if waiting for me every single time. The longer the pattern continued, the more that I realized that his behavior was not normal, and I became really uneasy and wished not to interact with him unless absolutely necessary. One day, as I was doing my route, I noticed that one of his deck chairs was moved to the side of his deck, near his driveway. I realized that I could walk a few steps down his driveway and put the newspaper under that chair without stepping onto his deck at all. Since I didn't go onto the deck, the dogs didn't bark, and he wasn't alerted that I was there, and he didn't open the door to try to talk to me as I gave him the paper. I thought that this was great, and I felt a lot more comfortable delivering to his house since I wasn't interacting with him anymore. Then one day, the deck chair was moved and put on the other side of the deck. I hadn't forgotten the reason why I didn't want to step foot on his deck, and I decided to put the newspaper in the same spot that I had been putting it for several weeks, even though the chair wasn't there to secure it. I crossed the street to deliver to the next house, and just as I was stepping onto the next customer's driveway, he stepped out of his house, looked at the newspaper, grabbed it, and shook it as he shouted at me across the street. He was yelling that the newspaper was about to blow away and become litter all down the road, despite the fact that there was no wind at all that day. I stood there and listened to him screaming at me in shock, unable to respond. He continued to scream that I was never to leave the newspaper anywhere on his deck, not even under a chair, but that I had to open his door and bring the newspaper inside. Thankfully, at this point, the woman whose driveway I was standing in opened her door and began to yell back at the man that he needed to stop screaming at me, and that she was sure that I had done nothing wrong. The man glared at her and finally went back into his house. The woman talked with me for a moment, telling me not to pay that man any attention. I was really scared and upset. As soon as that man told me that he wanted me to put the newspapers inside his house, the thought that he wanted to rape me popped into my head, and I was unable to shake it off. I grabbed my cart and went home without finishing my route, since I didn't feel safe being anywhere near his house. I went back home where I lived with my aunt and uncle during this time at least. My cousin asked me why I was home so early, and I told her what had happened, including all the previous weird interactions, and broke down crying, barely able to say my fear that I thought he was wanting to rape me. My aunt overheard part of our conversation, and my cousin helped me fill her in on the rest of it. I told my aunt that I had no clue what to do, because I had believed that not delivering a newspaper to him was not an option. I also felt that I had no proof to back up my feeling that he wanted to do anything with me, since nothing concretely implying that he had happened, and I assumed that most people would dismiss his individual actions like I had intentionally done. My aunt, however, told me that she would call the newspaper that I delivered for and inform them that I would no longer deliver to his house. My male cousin and uncle finished my route for me that night. The next time I was supposed to deliver, my male cousin came out with me to deliver to the houses near the man's house, doing that section of my route first, rather than in the middle like before. There was a day when I was walking down that road by myself, not delivering any papers, and the guy was driving down the road in his truck. He slowed down and yelled out the window at me, trying to get my attention, but I refused to turn my head to look at him or acknowledge him in any way, and just kept walking. Finally, he gave up and then drove off. Thankfully, that was my final interaction with him. My cousin continued to deliver that section of the route with me until I felt comfortable delivering by myself, since I had developed a pattern of delivering my papers so that I never stepped foot on the sidewalk directly in front of his house. When summer came, I got a summer job. In the next school year, I asked for a different route. It's been years since I moved out of my uncle and aunt's house, and out of that town. The last time I was in that town, I decided to take a walk down some of the streets where I delivered for nostalgic purposes, and I still felt a shiver of fear as I passed by that man's house, even though I was walking on sidewalk on the other side of the street, and I didn't see him at all. I still don't know if he would have attempted anything inappropriate with me if I had followed his wish and stepped into his house. But I had a bad gut feeling, and do not feel guilty at all for listening to it. He hopefully wouldn't recognize me this many years later since I'm an adult now, but I still hope that I never see him again. I had not been awake long when a loud knock sounded from our front door. As I stood on the landing, I could hear my mother open the door and begin joking with whoever was there. I couldn't make out much of the conversation. It didn't concern me too much. According to my mother, he had a parcel for us and wanted her to sign for it. He had no pen, so she began to close the door so that she would go and fetch one herself. Suddenly, I heard my mother scream real loudly. There was a man's voice shouting too. "Police! Police! This is a raid!" I was so shocked. I ran to halfway down the stairs to see what was going on. I could see a man, in his 50s, with short hair and a beard, wearing a fluorescent orange jacket. He was standing almost in our doorway. My mother was screaming at this point, trying to shove him out. He was clearly no police officer. Instinct kicked in. I threw myself down the stairs and against the door. My mother repeatedly hit the man in an attempt to shove him out. I screamed as loud as I could to try and attract attention, but nobody came to our aid. We managed to shove him out of the door with our combined force. We had the door almost shut when suddenly a large shove threw it back open. I was thrown back, and my hip collided with the corner on our electric meter cupboard behind the door. Before I knew it, there were two men, the orange vest-wearing man and another dressed in a black coat that obscured most of his face. In a blur of screaming, hitting and shoving on the door, we managed to get them out. My mother realized that they wanted the fake parcel back. She picked it up and threw it at their heads. This time, instead of trying to open our door again, they hurried off around the corner of the street. Once the door was locked, I asked my mother if she was all right. Both of us were shaking and could barely breathe. We should have called the police right away, but the first thing we did instead was to call my dad. I was in complete shock, concerned mostly about my mother, who was crying on the phone. My dad came home from work immediately and came in to see us while we called the police. It wasn't until the police arrived that I finally broke down crying myself. We put in a report and gave statements. The police didn't find any fingerprints on our door despite everything that had happened. We gave them the CCTV from our front door. It didn't get everything, but it got a good shot of both of their faces. We couldn't stay in the house after that. Every time there was a knock at the door, I would feel too afraid that I would start crying hysterically. We moved out a month later. Even now, 3 years later, I'm still suffering from this event. Knocks on the door make my heart pound in my chest. Though I now have the courage to answer, I am always afraid it may happen again. Every time I see someone wearing a fluorescent vest, I get so scared that I start to shake. The police did nothing, despite the fact that my mother broke 3 fingers in the scuffle and I came away with bruises. Our case was shoveled after 3 months. We still have no idea why they chose us. We don't know what they had planned or who they were. I still feel ill every time I think about what could have happened to us if they had succeeded in getting into our house. So to the creepy guys who tried to break into my house, maybe somebody will next time just shoot you in the face. So I work at a multi-billion-dollar retail chain, and besides my main other department, which is also the back room, there is a second department I've cross-trained in that I work in for a couple of hours each morning, and every Saturday accepting deliveries. Now, I'm of average build, not overweight, but not as slender as I used to be. I have kids, so I have a bit of a mommy tummy that I've fought to get rid of for years. I think I look average, but used to get a lot of attention back in the day from young men, around when I was in my 20s. I'm now in my mid-30s, and though I look a little younger, it's not as much as it used to be. These days, the only guys eyeing me are the 10-plus years older than me, and yeah, usually not attractive either. I'm married and not looking for a replacement either. I love my husband to death. There's a good variety of delivery drivers who deliver to my store, and I know many of the regulars by name. Every now and then there is a new driver for a substitute driver for one of the companies that we order from, but for the most part, it's the same people. So there's a regular driver who comes in now every Saturday to deliver milk. We'll call him Mike. He's mid-50s, nearing retirement age for the company he works for. He's friendly and cheerful, and always greets everyone happily. He always loves making jokes. He even does the shave and haircut 2 bits, knock on your bay door when he arrives kind of thing. I've always thought that he was pretty cool, and even said he was my favorite delivery driver since he's so nice. I think he may have gotten the wrong idea, though. When I first started there, the other lady who used to substitute to the apartment warned me that Mike was a terrible flirt, and that he liked to try to get with all the ladies. I kind of just shrugged it off. I didn't think it was a big ordeal. Over the past year, he said that I'm his favorite receiving person, and that I'm beautiful. He has been very flirty, and even asked me out on lunch dates. I have always declined, and told him that I'm married. This hasn't deterred him in the least. He could care less about all of that. Mike has gotten friendly enough to even show me pictures and videos of trips that he's been on and whatnot. Last week he showed me a video of his drive up his driveway and views around his 300 acres of land. I thought that was rather odd, though. I mean, why show someone your driveway all of a sudden and show off your land? What was his goal in all of this? He started calling me a nickname recently, too, which no one ever really called me, as it was something only my creeper dad ever called me. Even my husband knows to steer clear of that nickname because it triggers me. It's an obvious nickname for my name, but no one uses it. Kind of like Mike is a nickname for Michael, or Kate for Caitlin. Well, yesterday, just before he left, he said something that I wasn't expecting. Mike asked me if he would shrink wrap me and take me with him. I gave him a firm and immediate no. This immediately made me think of a murder that happened in my area before I moved out here, where a woman was saran wrapped by her boyfriend and dumped naked, and saran wrapped on the side of the highway. The police were never able to connect the guy to the murder, though. The locals knew he had to be the one who did it, and I was told he left the area right after that. The more I think of this question, the more it creeped me out. I wonder if I should report it to management, or just call him to cut that crap out next time I see him as a warning. The company prefers people to tell harassers to stop before reporting an issue, but I'm not sure if this falls into that category, or is creepy enough to be something that I should be reporting. What do you guys think? All I know is I'm really uncomfortable having to see him again next Saturday when he delivers again. Update. I took my manager aside and told her the situation, and she agreed that it definitely wasn't appropriate, and that she wants a written statement from me on the matter. So we'll see how it's handled. If he stops delivering to the store, or stops being creepy, I'll know it's been handled properly. I talked to my assistant manager on Friday, and she said that it was being handled by ethics, so not at the store level. I told her I was thinking of having my supervisor shadow me while the guy was there on Saturday. Saturday morning came through, and I felt like crap, and really didn't want to have to deal with him on top of already feeling tired, so I just called out. Some poor support manager had to deal with him instead of me. I don't know how long it will take them to address the issue, but I hope that it stops soon. So my case is back and being investigated at store level again. Did the statement and answered questions and whatnot. Won't know anything for a while, I'm guessing. I asked for my guarantees that they would keep me safe. None were given. They just said that they're looking into it, and that if I have further issues, to notify them. Oh yeah, that makes me feel so much safer. Totally. Today I was anxious to go to work, as I know it's the day that the creepy guy delivers milk. The closer that it got to 7:30 a.m., the more nervous I got. Just before 7:30, I went down to my other work area on the opposite side of the back room. It's a huge store, so it's approximately 600 feet away or so. When I got down there, I discovered that my supervisor wasn't there, as I had feared, and my anxiety only grew. When I got back to my area, there were only a few merchandisers milling about, loading up their products onto carts and whatnot. I didn't see any other managers, including the one that I had spoken to earlier in the day to confirm that he would be present, and nearby to give me some sense of security. In a moment of desperation, I thought back to what my coworker had told me just yesterday. And that was to just ask a female coworker to stay with me and look out for me. So I asked one, and she said she would. We waited in the back room, distracting ourselves with meaningless tasks to pass the time. Before I knew it, a half hour went by, then an hour, and then another half hour. No milk. I went to lunch and thanked my coworker for humoring me and staying nearby. After lunch, I checked to see if the milk ever came, but it hadn't. I was pretty happy I didn't have to see him for another week at least. Then later I was pulled into the office at the end of my shift. The manager then told me that as of today, that the man, Mike, is no longer permitted in our store. He can't deliver there, or even shop there. So now they have to rearrange our delivery schedule for milk. But I honestly was just so relieved about this. I told the manager that I felt really relieved, and thanked him for letting me know. It's like a weight has finally been lifted off my chest. So creepy delivery guy that used to deliver milk at my store, may I never see you ever again.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.